Hey there everybody, welcome to Auto Bears, and this handsome blue beast is the new GWM Haval Jolion Pro. Now, regulars to the channel would have already seen a Jolion Pro because I have done a walk around video of the car highlighting the exterior and interior features, but I've now got one for a full review. Now, the Jolion Pro starts at a smidge under £24,000 and you can only get it as a full hybrid, but they're looking to take on the likes of MG with the ZS Hybrid Plus, Omoda with the 5 SUV, and even the big boys like Toyota with the CHR. Now, I've had the Jolion Pro for a week and I'm going to answer a couple of big questions. Number one, what's it like? And number two, does this quirky full hybrid really offer true value for money? Well, stick with me to find out. Now, when it comes to the Jolion Pro styling, I actually think this is a very handsome and distinctive looking family SUV, and it'll definitely warrant a second glance, especially if you've not seen the brand before. Now, when you look at the Jolion Pro in profile, I don't get a traditional SUV look to it, more of a family hatchback that's been given the crossover treatment. And as a result, I do get strong Mercedes-Benz GLA vibes from it. Now, speaking of Mercedes-Benz, up front we have got this big bold grille with the vertical chrome slats in it, very Mercedes-Benz. The Haval badge there with the teal backing, again, very distinctive and will warrant a second glance to identify the car. We've got some extra venting down below and we've even got a very sporty front splitter, even though this doesn't quite have the performance to back it up. Speaking of aerodynamics, we've also got these little fins here as well to help channel air down the side of the car. However, I think they might be more for show than actual aerodynamic aids. And we've even got them replicated at the back of the car as well with a rear diffuser there. Although again, that one's definitely for show. And then we have got your traditional headlight cluster here with your LEDs, particularly on this Ultra trim, your distinctive daytime running lights, and we have got this big vent here. However, it is all filled in, so that's just for show. And then at the tail of the car, we have got a distinctive tail light bar. That's very much the trend nowadays. And we've also got a great big spoiler there, again, to give it that over-the-top sporty look. And as a result, I do kind of get some Hot Wheels vibes to the car. However, the one thing that really does stand out is this Arctic blue metallic paint job. I mean, it is just absolutely stunning. And on a sunny day like today, I say that as the clouds are going over us, it really does stand out, and it has been a major talking point for the car. But you let me know what you think of this Arctic blue paint job in the comment section below. And if you do watch my walk around video, that was in Ares grey, which I do think is, yes, very subtle, but this really is one of the highlights to the car. Now, you also have those very nice looking 18-inch alloy wheels. They're not too difficult to clean as well in preparation for this shoot. And as you can see, there's quite a chunky sidewall as well. And what I do like is that we have got some little sporty black accents going around the car just to give it that sporty edge to it. But you let me know what you think of the Jolion Pro styling in the comments section below. Do you think it's a very handsome family SUV, or with all the little styling features, it's perhaps a little bit over the top? Do let me know. But on that note, I think it's time that we leave the exterior of the Jolion Pro and we see what it's like on the inside. Sat in the front of the Jolion Pro, you are greeted with a very comfortable, spacious and nicely designed interior. That does happen to be jam-packed full of kit, but then again I have got the top of the range Ultra trim. Now, when it comes to getting in and out of the Jolion Pro, it is actually really easy because the doors open nice and wide and you have got that slightly raised seated position. So if you do suffer from any kind of mobility issues, then I do recommend having a look at this car. But I will mention that there's no grab handle for the driver, but there is for the front passenger. And then once you're sat in the seats, you find that they are very comfortable. They are quite slim, but they do manage to hold a big bear like me in place. And I have got electric adjustment on this top of the range Ultra trim. However, I don't have any adjustable lumbar support, so that's just something to be aware of there. And then when it comes to the steering wheel, I have got both rake and reach adjustment, so it does mean getting the perfect driving position is easy, but I would like the steering wheel to have a little bit more reach adjustment, because it does feel like I'm having to extend my arms just a little bit more than what I would do on some of its rivals. And then when it comes to interior quality, I am going to say it's pretty decent in here. Now, of course, for this kind of price bracket, we are going to get a lot of hard, scratchy plastics, but there are quite a few varieties of them, which is actually very pleasant. So on top of the dash, yes, we have got hard, scratchy plastic, but it is soft on top of the door here. We've also got some leatherette here as well on the door card, but some other hard, scratchy plastic there. We then have this fabric trim here on the dash with the contrasting stitching to give this air of quality. We have got this metal effect trim here as well on the dash and on the doors, and on the doors they do actually light up, so that is quite a quirky feature. We've got that same metal effect trim here on the center console along with some satin trim, and then we've got some digital wood just a little bit further back, as well as here on the doors as well. So there's quite a variety of hard, scratchy plastics in here, but it does mean it livens up the cabin and it doesn't feel as cheap as I was expecting. And the one big blessing is that there's no piano black plastic in here, so that is actually a bit of a highlight. So yeah, when you get yourself into the front of the Jolion Pro, you do find it's got a really nice design to it. It is comfortable as well, and yeah, I do like the kind of air of quality in here, especially, like I said, for the price point. Cubby spaces are actually pretty good in here. We got some decent sized door pockets. We can get a medium sized bottle of drink in there, but unsurprisingly they're not lined with any fabric, so loose items will rattle around a bit. And then just below the buttons here on the right hand side, we got an extra cubby space, again not lined with any rubber, so if you do decide to put some loose change in there or your keys, it will make some noise. Now here we have got a floating center console, so down below we got a little tray area. It's not rubber lined. It is hard, scratchy plastic, and you have got your 12-volt socket and USB-A charging input. But that is a perfect size if perhaps you want to put your handbag or a purse down there. And then on top of the floating center console up front, we have got your wireless charging pad, which is rubber lined. But if you go for a lower trim level, that will just be a little rubber area where you can put your phone. It wouldn't be a wireless charging pad. That's only on the ultra trim level. And then further back, we have got these three little open tray areas. All of them are rubber lined, and they have got various uses apart from the smallest one, which I'm not quite sure what I would use it for. However, on the left hand side, we've got the largest tray area, which is rubber lined, and that is perfect if perhaps you want to put a pen in there or the keys for your Haval. Or in fact you can put both together, so that is very handy. And then on the right hand side of the center console, we have got the larger of the two extra little kind of cubby spaces, and this is perfect for your mobile phone, and just slots in there like that. Now the reason it's perfect for that is because when you use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it's tethered only, it's not wireless. And next to the wireless charging pad with the USB-A underneath, there is actually a little hole that you can thread your cable through. So therefore you can connect it to your phone and use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. So that is actually a really quirky system there. So I really do like that. And it does mean that your passenger, if they've got wireless charging capability on their phone, can use that whilst yours is charging and connected up to the car. So I really do like that. And then just behind there, we have got this little lid area. And if I open it up, it unveils two cup holders, or I should say one cup holder and one little kind of, I'll say, energy drink holder, because it's only big enough for one of those small cans. It is rubber lined as well, and you have got a couple of little rubber grippers to help you out there. Then just behind there, you've got your centre armrest, which just does unveil a bit of extra space. It has got a bit of cloth lining at the bottom, so if you do put any loose items in there, they shouldn't make much noise. And there is a little something underneath there. Perhaps you could put your wallet or perhaps a credit card or something underneath, and it is tucked out the way. And then we've got the glove box, which is actually of a decent size and shape. Unsurprisingly, again, it's not lined with any fabric, and the book pack itself is really tiny, so it does mean you can take advantage of most of that space in the glove box. And then finally, and surprisingly, even though we have got the sunroof on this top of the range Ultra trim, we do still have a place to put your sunglasses, so that is actually very handy. So yeah, when it comes to the cubby spaces in the Jolion Pro, I am actually pretty impressed. Now, even though this is a full hybrid car, I will say some of the controls are done via the main infotainment system. For example, the dual zone climate control, heated and ventilated seats. But there are still some physical buttons here throughout the cabin. So on top of the dash, they're not shortcut buttons per se, but they do have simple commands for them. So on the left-hand side, we got the ability to turn the climate control on and off, as well as your air conditioning, and recirculate the air. We have then got buttons for the front and rear demisting, a button to access the 360 cameras and parking sensors, your park assist button, and then another one to turn off and on the infotainment system. We have then got a nice big hazard button here between the air vents. We have got a little rotary knob here for your gear selector, just like we saw on the MG ZS when that first came out, along with an auto hold button and another button for your electric handbrake. And then here on the steering wheel, we have got on the left-hand side your media, communication and voice controls. And on the right-hand side, we have got your radar-guided cruise controls, as well as all the buttons you need to access the driver digital display. And then we have got a big physical start-stop button here for the engine. On the right-hand side, we have got a couple of buttons for the instrument cluster lighting, as well as your traction control, and we've also got hill descent control. And then we've got a few buttons there to operate the mirrors and the windows. So when it comes to the actual layout in here on the Jolion Pro, ergonomically, it is actually really nicely laid out, and it is very simple. And like I said as well, you've got the gear selected there, and it does feel of a decent quality, and I do like the little click there. Again, very reminiscent of the MG ZS when that first appeared. And then finally, we've got the infotainment system and the digital dashboard display. Now, I'm going to start with the dashboard display. Now, when you look at it, it looks like a full screen, but it's actually a 7-inch display flanked by 2 permanent graphics. On the left-hand side, your engine temperature. On the right-hand side, your fuel gauge. And then with the main screen, by default, it brings up this kind of road like you're going to use the radar-guided cruise control. And then you have to use the buttons on the right-hand side of the steering wheel in order to change it and go through the various menu and get your driver information. The one thing I have noticed is that it does like to kind of go back to that original display. So that can be a little bit vexing, especially if you've got no intention of using the radar guided cruise control. But in terms of the graphics, it's really nice and clear. I do love the presentation, and it's easy to read when on the move. And like I said, when you start using those buttons on the right hand side, you can go through the various menus, and there are a couple of ways you can kind of customize it for your own liking. And then we got the main infotainment system. So we have got a 12.3 inch display on the 2 higher trim levels. It's 10.25 on the entry level premium. It is flush against the dash, which does mean that as I'm driving, it's not kind of tilted towards the driver, so it can be a bit reflective. And the other issue as well is the main kind of menu screen is actually on the left hand side, so you have to reach a little bit in order to activate it. You have got things like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and as I mentioned, they are tethered only. And then when you're going through the menus, you do find it is pretty responsive. You get a little click when you go onto the various menus. It's, yeah, nice and easy to use, but it's very much a case of set up before you set off, because there are quite a few menus in order to go through. And you can do things like your seat settings, where I've got ventilated seats, but you can't really use them using the voice activation control. I can't seem to find the right command for it. So that can be a little bit annoying when you have to kind of go through a couple of menus in order to find the seat ventilation, and then you got to try and get yourself back to things like Apple CarPlay or your Android Auto. So that's just something to be aware of there. But in terms of presentation, it's nice and colourful. There is a bit of customization there as well for you. And yeah, when it comes to things like the dual zone climate control, you got some big icons there for the temperature. You can either tap it individually or you can scroll up and down, which is very cool. The actual fan strength does tend to be quite easy to use. But again, on the left hand side are where you want to have your fan direction and strength, as well as like things like your front defrost and rear defrost, which is actually here as a shortcut button on the dash. So yeah, when it comes to the interior of the Jolion Pro, it is a nice, quirky and comfortable place to be. I would like the infotainment system to be a bit more user friendly, and I do love the cubby spaces, and there is a bit of quirkiness in here as well, because I haven't mentioned it yet, but up here we have got a USB-A charging input, which is perfect if you want to install a dash camera. So there's not too many manufacturers out there that are doing little features like that. So yeah, when it comes to sitting in the front here, it is a nice, comfortable place to be. There is a good amount of features on the infotainment system, but it is clearly a case of setup before you set off. And on that note, I think it's time we leave the front of the Jolion Pro and we see what it's like for rear passengers. Sat in the back of the Jolion Pro, it's actually very spacious and comfortable back here, and this was a genuine surprise, and it is a highlight to the car. It's also very easy to get in and out of because the doors open nice and wide, and you have got that slightly raised seated position, plus a couple of grab handles to help you get in and out. And like I said, once you're sat here, it is surprisingly spacious and comfortable. That driver's seat is set to my driving position, and I'm 5'7" tall and 5'7" wide. And as you can see, I've got a really good amount of knee room. I can tuck my feet underneath the driver's seat so I can stretch out, and headroom is actually pretty good as well. So I do think you can get a couple of 6-footers sat in the back of the Jolion, and they should be comfortable for a short to perhaps medium length journey. Now, another big surprise is that there's actually a completely flat floor back here. There is no transmission hump coming through, which does mean at a push you could get 3 adults back here, as long as they're not as broad as me. But I will say, even for somebody like myself, as I sit here, yeah, my head is rubbing up against the roof lining. So that's just something to be aware of there. But this should be ideal for 3 kids. Now, speaking of kids, we have got ISOFIX supports on the outer seats, and we have got this Velcro cover, which covers the ISOFIX bars, but it's actually really easy to gain access for them. Now, I will mention as well that there's no ISOFIX support on the front passenger seat, but on this kind of price bracket, I'm not really too bothered or surprised by that. Now, when it comes to cubby spaces, it's actually pretty good. We got some decent sized door pockets. Again, you can get a medium sized bottle of drink in there. We have got your aeroplane style pockets on the backs of the front seats. We have got your armrest here that you can pull down. It does kind of lock into place, and you've got a couple of extra cup holders with some little plastic grippers on them, which is very handy. And there is actually a little bit of extra cubby space to put your phone in whilst it's charging, because when it comes to features, we have got 2 USB-A charging inputs. Now, granted, yes, it's a bit disappointing they're not USB-C, but to have 2 of them is actually a bit of a bonus, because usually for this type of car, you usually get 1. So to have 2, yeah, is a definite highlight. And we have got a couple of vents there just above, so you can blow the air and direct it throughout the cabin. And then the windows are of a really lovely shape and size. They are tinted as well. They don't open all the way down, maybe around about kind of 90%, but there is a little ledge here so I can rest my arm on a longer journey. So that is a highlight. And we have got a little extra window here in the C-pillar just to bring a little bit more light into the cabin here. So yeah, being sat here in the back of the Jolion Pro is a real surprise because it is comfortable and there is plenty of space. And one other feature I really do like, although I didn't mention it about the front, the interior lights are LED and they do give off an air of quality in the car, because usually, again, with this price bracket, they would be halogens and they'd have that kind of dull yellow look to them. So again, another surprise is that there's this air of quality throughout the Jolion Pro that you wouldn't really expect. It's these little kind of quirks that you don't expect in a car like this, and they do put a smile on your face. And on that note, I think it's time that we leave the rear seats of the Jolion Pro and we see what it's like in the boot. Now, if you have watched my walk around video of the Jolion Pro, I did say that the boot area looked to be a bit of an Achilles heel for the car, even though I didn't know the actual boot capacity numbers. However, knowing the numbers now, I can confirm that when you do open the boot of the Jolion Pro, you are greeted with 255 litres of space, which is quite frankly very poor for this segment of car, which is really disappointing given the amount of rear passenger space you get. Now, the reason for that is the hybrid gubbins are all underneath the boot floor along with a 12-volt battery, so it does mean that there's no space underneath the boot floor, which is really disappointing. But when you get the boot open, you are greeted with a nice wide square load area. You couldn't get a large suitcase in here, but perhaps a couple of carry-ons and maybe a week's shopping at a push. What I do like is that there's no boot lip to navigate over. However, the boot level as you can see, is actually very high, so it makes it very difficult for dogs to jump in and out of. But given the literage, it wouldn't be a Labrador, more probably a Chihuahua. And I will say as well, if you are looking to load any large bulky items like a wheelchair or mobility scooter, yeah, it's going to be very difficult. And then when it comes to features in the Jolion Pro, well, you've got a couple of them, and that is basically two little kind of gaps on the side here, little cubby spaces that you could put some items in. There is a little shopping hook as well, and that's about it. And if you do lift up the boot floor, you do basically get your warning triangle, and you do get your tyre puncture repair kit, but that's it. You can't put the tonneau cover underneath the boot floor, which is a bit disappointing. However, if you do put the seats down, there is a bit of an incline there, and also a drop just behind the boot floor. So make sure that no small items fall behind there. And it is actually very easy to get the seats down, because you can do it from the boot area. So that is very handy, but yes, there is a little bit of a step there. So any kind of small loose items will roll back behind the rear seats. So yeah, with the boot open of the Jolion Pro, it is really disappointing in regards to numbers and lack of features. But if you do have the full ICE version, which is available in other markets, you do have a much larger boot capacity. So I will say on that note, I think it's time we get the boot down of the Jolion Pro, take it out on the road and see if it redeems itself there. So once you get driving in the Jolion Pro, first impressions are actually pretty positive. It is a nice, comfortable and easy car to drive, and depending on the exterior conditions, you might find that it will want to set off in electric only, but we'll talk about the hybrid system a little bit later on. And when it comes to visibility, I'm going to say it's pretty good. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, this doesn't feel like a proper SUV, it feels more like a crossover, so you still have that slightly raised seated position. So I have got a very commanding view of the road ahead, and the bonnet does slope away, so you can't quite judge where the front of the car is. Now, the entry-level version of the Jolion Pro does come with a reversing camera and rear parking sensors. This top-of-the-range Ultra does come with a 360 camera and all-round parking sensors, plus a park assist feature. Now, the A-pillars, I will say, are quite thick and chunky, but surprisingly, I've not really had to look around them much at any junctions, but just make sure you're happy by doing a test drive in the Jolion Pro if that doesn't cause too much of an issue. And then the wing mirrors are of a lovely shape and size. I have got blind spot monitoring as well, and that is standard. And then when I look over my shoulder, I do find there is a slightly thick C-pillar there, but it doesn't cause too much of an issue because I got that blind spot monitoring. And then I will say rear visibility is a little bit disappointing. It is quite a narrow field of view, but fortunately the headrests don't cause any obstructions there. But it is that fact of, yeah, it is quite narrow, but fortunately, like I just said, when it comes to parking, as standard, you do get rear parking sensors and a reversing camera. And the clarity of the camera is a real highlight. It is something I really do like, even when compared to cars more than double the price tag. That's how much I am impressed with it. So yeah, once you get going in the Jolion Pro, first impressions are pretty positive, but like I said, when it comes to visibility, just make sure you're happy with the driving position and things like that A-pillar, which are quite thick and chunky. Now, there are 3 trim levels to choose from in the Jolion Pro range. You've got the entry-level Premium, the mid-spec Lux, and then the top-of-the-range Ultra, which is what I've got here. Now, what I do like is that even the top-of-the-range Ultra starts at a smidge under £30,000, but you will quickly go over that if you decide to go for any of the optional paint colours or decide to get a tow bar fitted. So that's just something to be aware of. Now, I would recommend going for the mid-spec Lux, because in terms of standard equipment, you should have everything that you'd want and need. You'll have things like radar guided cruise control, dual zone climate control, the larger infotainment system, the up-rated LED lights and 18-inch alloy wheels, as well as a 360 camera. Essentially things that I think you'll really love and appreciate in the car ready to go. Now, if you do decide to go for the Ultra, you do get things like the head-up display, you do get the sunroof, which is very lovely, and you get park assist and all-round parking sensors. But it's entirely up to you if you want to spend that little bit extra. But personally, I'd recommend looking at the Lux and then working your way up. Now, when it comes to powering the Jolion Pro, it is really lovely and simple because there's one engine available. It is a 1.5 litre 4-cylinder petrol engine that is mated to a full hybrid system, and it sends its power via a 2-speed dedicated hybrid transmission through to the front wheels. There is no all-wheel drive version available of the Jolion Pro. Now, I am going to put everything on screen now for you because it is quite unique in the way that the power is delivered and actually where most of the power comes from. So as you can see, combined, we have got 186 brake horsepower and 375 Newton meters of torque, and a 0 to 62 time of around 9 seconds. And also, Haval claim that I should be able to get around 47 miles per gallon on a combined cycle. I'm pretty sure that's WLTP as well. But as you can see on screen, it's actually kind of split in where you get the power from. You actually get 146 brake horsepower just from the battery and electric motor, and then 93 brake horsepower from the engine. And then with the torque, again, you get 250 Newton meters from the battery and motor, and then a further 125 from the engine. And the reason it's kind of set up like that, and it is very much like the MG ZS Hybrid Plus, is so that way you do get that boost in performance, but it does help out as well when it comes to frugality. And something that's quite unique about the Jolion Pro is the size of the hybrid battery. It's actually one of the largest, if not the largest, in its class at 1.69 kilowatt hour. And just to give you a comparison, the Hyundai Tucson full hybrid that I reviewed recently, that had a 1.49 kilowatt hour battery, and the 2-litre Toyota Corolla has a 1.44 kilowatt hour battery. So both of them are smaller than the Jolion Pro. That is actually quite unique, because this is one of the big claims from the brand, is that on a full tank I should be able to get up to 568 miles. That's quite nuts for this type of car, and I do kind of believe Haval, because on the digital dashboard display, as I mentioned, you've got your main driver display in the center, and on the right hand side you've got like a dedicated fuel gauge. But there is also a range gauge just to the left of that. So right now I've actually kind of gone 3 notches, or nearly half a tank, on the Jolion Pro, but it's still showing me around 266 miles range, but under half of the range left. So technically this is kind of saying I should be able to do maybe 600 miles. So yeah, when it comes to kind of the engine and the gearbox, the way it's set up, like I said, it's a 2-speed kind of dedicated hybrid transmission. It's a very unique gearbox. I mean, even MG have a 3-speed in their Hybrid Plus. But what I like with this is that it kind of feels not unlike a CVT, but you have got those 2 gears there. But because you've got the battery and the motor supplying most of the power, it does actually kind of feel pretty brisk. Now, you actually have the kind of responsiveness that you would get from an electric vehicle, not the performance, just that instant response, because that's really initially where all the power is kind of coming from. So I do really like that and the setup in the Jolion Pro. And for day-to-day driving, I've had no issues whatsoever. It doesn't stutter or stammer because you've got those kind of 2 gears essentially. It just very seamlessly goes from one to the other. Even now I can just put my foot down, it's instant. And I'm not even in sport mode, I'm just in normal mode. And that is actually really impressive. This setup, I think, has been done very well. And because you've got that larger battery, you will find that the Jolion Pro wants to drive as much as it can in full electric, and that's something I do like as well, and you'll definitely appreciate it around town and around kind of urban areas. So yeah, when it comes to powering the Jolion Pro, it's a very unique setup, but it does seem to work. Something I do like in the Jolion Pro is the fact that we do have brake regeneration, and it is something we are seeing in more and more full hybrids. The best example would definitely be Nissan with the e-Power Qashqai and their e-pedal. And just like other cars out there, including EVs, you've got 3 levels to choose from: weak, mid and strong. So it does mean you do have a pretty strong regen braking setting. But on the Jolion Pro, we have a 4th one, and it is a big surprise. We have 1 pedal drive-in, and that's not something you're going to come across really in a full hybrid. That's something kind of reserved for full electric vehicles. But what I do like is that it is very strong. It does provide, for the most part, proper 1 pedal drive-in, but unlike an EV where, say, you're at 50 miles an hour, you take your foot off and then you get the full brunt of the regen braking, it does have this kind of growth in the strength of the 1 pedal system. So let's say 40 miles an hour, as I'm driving along, if I take my foot off, it just slowly starts to put that brake on, but it gets stronger the slower you get. So it's perfect for, say, around town or if you're in a traffic jam. What I also really love about it is that it will bring you to a complete stop. That's something I really do like. I mean, there are full electric cars out there where their kind of regen system doesn't bring you to a complete stop. You just tend to do a little bit of a crawl. But no, in the Jolion Pro, you'll actually come to a complete stop. I'm not going to demonstrate it now because I've got cars behind me, but that was a genuine surprise. And what I like as well is when you set it, it stays there. The car remembers that you've set that 1 pedal drive. So that's something I really do appreciate. And if you do lots of town driving, you'll definitely appreciate it as well, because it will just help you eke out those little extra yards of driving in full electric as it charges up the battery. Now, when it comes to ride and refinement, I am going to say it's okay. Now, I am driving through the village, which I do my kind of suspension test and everything in, and it's dealing with a lot of the bumps and imperfections pretty well. I mean, yes, I am going to feel them inside the cabin. Of course, being this a kind of budget family SUV, there are going to be some limitations, but for everyday driving, I can't really see you having any major issues. Yes, you do feel those bumps and imperfections come through, but they're not really that uncomfortable. These seats do a decent job of removing a good chunk of the vibration from the outside. Now, if you do want to kind of get the most comfortable version of the Jolion Pro, I would recommend going for the premium, because you get the 17-inch alloy wheels, so you will get a bit more of a sidewall to the tyre. But for everyday driving, this is dealing with the bumps and imperfections really well. Yes, if you do go over any big potholes and manhole covers like this, yeah, you are going to get a boom and a little jolt come through into the cabin. Like I said, this isn't going to be like a Rolls Royce, but it does deal with the bumps and imperfections actually pretty well. Like I said, for everyday driving, you shouldn't have any issues whatsoever in the Jolion Pro, and that's even with the 18-inch alloy wheels. But yes, if you do want to spend a little bit more money, you are going to get yourself into cars that are more comfortable, cars like the Skoda Kamiq, for example. But when you then get yourself up to speed, say 60 miles per hour, like I'm going to do here, you do find that the Jolion Pro does kind of settle down, but some of those little kind of undulations do make their way through into the cabin. Now, when it comes to refinement, I am going to say again, it's not too bad, particularly at kind of town speeds when you're driving about, because the car will want to drive in full electric mode, which is absolutely fine. So it does become very refined, but I'm doing about 60 miles per hour now. And yes, I do get a bit of wind noise coming off the A-pillar, and there is a bit of tyre roar, but surprisingly, you don't get much from the engine. There is the faintest of drones, but it does kind of hide in the background. Like I said, the transmission does kind of feel like a CVT, so when you do put your foot down, yes, you do get that kind of engine note coming into the cabin, but it's not that intrusive. That's actually a genuine surprise, and I do like the fact there's a bit of a whistle there. I don't think this is turbocharged. I think it is actually just relying on the hybrid system for that big boost in power. But yeah, it's actually not that intrusive, the engine noise. That was a pleasant surprise, and for driving around at 50-60 miles per hour, again, you shouldn't have too much in the way of issues. Now, you do have a 6-speaker stereo system if you go for the Lux upwards, and it's not too bad. It's not a branded system, but it does take, you know, some of those kind of outside intrusions and kind of fade them away, and it is a pretty decent sound system. Just don't kind of put the bass up too much because it will get quite distorted, but it will definitely help if you are going on a longer journey, as I intend to. So yeah, when it comes to the ride and refinement in the Jolion Pro, it's absolutely fine for everyday driving. It is gonna, you know, you are gonna feel those bumps and imperfections come through, but that's what you would expect for this kind of price tag. So what about the Jolion Pro's handling? Well, firstly, I do like the size of the steering wheel. I will say it is a bit thinner than what I was expecting, so definitely kind of have a feel at the dealership and see if you do like it and how it feels in your hands. And one thing I will say as well is, before you go into the drive modes, you can actually adjust the weight of the steering. There are 3 kind of levels available. There's light, medium, and heavy. I say medium is actually classed as comfort. So that's what I've got it in now, and I've also, in regards to drive modes, got it in normal. And I will say this feels absolutely fine. It's perfect for everyday driving. This is in no way a sporty kind of family SUV. And when you kind of turn the wheel, yeah, you don't really feel connected to the front wheels. There isn't that feedback there that you would get from something like a Seat Arona, and as a result, it means that you don't really want to push the Jolion into the corners at speed, because it doesn't inspire that kind of confidence, and it doesn't as well reward you like the Seat I just mentioned. It's not going to put a big beaming smile on your face. And then if I do decide I want to change the drive mode, where is the drive mode? There it is. So put it into sport mode. I just got a flash of the hazard lights. I think that's to warn other drivers out there that sport mode is engaged, and it's not the most engaging. It's perfect for everyday driving, even in sport mode now. Chuck it into the corner. Oh, there's a bit of roll and lean there, and yeah, it doesn't reward you. It's not that kind of car. Definitely put it back into normal. You have got economy as well, and there's one that says snowfield, so basically to deal with very poor conditions like snow and mud. But really, you're going to keep this car in either normal or efficiency for everyday driving. So with my time in the Jolion Pro, what have been some of the highlights and some of the little niggles I need to let you guys know about? Well, the first highlight has to be that Arctic blue paint. I mean, that is absolutely stunning, and it really does stand out, and it has been a bit of a conversation starter leading up to what is that car, because no one else has seen a Haval in the area. So it's always great to give them a little bit of an insight into the car and brand. So that has definitely been a highlight for this particular car. Also, the kind of standard levels of equipment you get, particularly when it comes to driver aids and safety. I love the fact that you can get the entry-level premium, and it will come with radar-guided cruise control and things such as blind spot monitoring. Now, of course, with us having all those safety systems, it does mean you get the bings and bongs coming into the cabin. But I've not been getting all the bings and bongs that other people have been getting in the Jolion Pro. I've only been getting 2 main bings and bongs. So the main bings I have been getting are from the lane keep assist. If I get close to the white lines, I get a little icon that tells me to kind of turn left or right with the steering to keep me in lane, and then you get a little bit of a bing. And then the other bong that I get is actually in regards to the kind of speed sign recognition, or I should just say speed, because I can go from one speed zone to the other and I'll get a little bing. I can go from 30 to 60 and I get a bing. That's fine. But then I can go from 30, turn into another road, which is another 30, and it will give me another bing, or it'll give me another bong. And I'm kind of like, well, I know it's a 30 mile an hour limit. There's no need to change. But it will do that every time I kind of turn a corner. So that's just something to be aware of there. And then there are little things in the Jolion that really do stand out. Like firstly, the interior LED lights, the way they fade in and fade out when you get in and out of the car, that gives a real air of quality in here. It's a really lovely crisp light. Speaking of lights, the LEDs, when you upgrade to the Lux or the top of the range Ultra, really lovely at night. Now you don't get things like high beam assist that I've noticed, but even when you do put it into full beam, it really is bright and it does light up the road. And even when you take the full beam off, yeah, it does a brilliant job. That was, again, a genuine surprise. And then you got things like the 360 cameras and the kind of parking sensors on this top of the range Ultra. The clarity of the camera on screen is really high, and that's not just during the day, it's also at night. You don't get much in the way of noise on the display. That's been a real highlight. And also, you know, the little guidelines you get on the screen if you're perhaps turning a corner or looking to park and reverse park, the actual animation of them is really crisp and clear and incredibly smooth. That's been another highlight. And I actually recently had a car, it was an SUV, I'm not going to say the brand, but the car itself was over £70,000. And the clarity of the screen and that animation wasn't half as good as it was in the Jolion. So that is another real highlight to the car. There's just those little things I really do like. You can even do things like customize the head-up display as well as the digital driver display. The only thing, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll reiterate it again, is that when you are doing the digital driver's display and you're going through the menus, unless you're not using the kind of radar guided cruise control, it will allow you to go into those menus, but every so often it just goes back to that main driver display screen. And that does become a little bit vexing, especially if I want to keep an eye on, say, my driver data. So that's just another thing to keep an eye out for. But I will say these are things that can be kind of updated via a software update. Nice and easy. So yeah, there are plenty of highlights in the Jolion Pro. Of course, there are going to be little niggles in a car like this. I will say build quality and perceived quality has been good as well. I've not experienced any rattles or creaks, so that's been another highlight. So yeah, I think on that note, I think it's time we move on to the conclusion. So, what are my thoughts on the Great Wall Motors Haval Jolion Pro family hybrid SUV? Boy, that was a bit of a mouthful. Well, at the beginning of this review, I asked two big questions. What's the car like, and does it represent great value for money? Well, at starting a smidge under £24,000, this is definitely an intriguing car to look at, and it does represent, I think, very good value for money. But as a car itself, it drives pretty well, it rides well, you got very good looks to it, you got that absolutely an amazing Arctic blue paint, and in the land of bland colours, it's great to see someone coming out with colours like this, particularly at this price tag. So that's something that I really do appreciate Haval for doing with the Jolion Pro. However, there is room for improvement. They need to work on how they can make this car more practical. That 255 litres of boot space, I'm sorry, I think for a lot of people it's going to be a deal breaker, particularly for those, I think, who've got young families. But if perhaps you're a retired couple and everyone's fled the nest and you just want an economical hybrid family SUV that looks quirky and is jam-packed full of kit, then this is definitely one to look at. I do think it's a bit, I don't know, I kind of prefer this to the new MG ZS Hybrid Plus. That did feel a little bit rough around the edges. This also feels the same way. There is room for improvement, but there are the little things on this car that I really do love that just kind of give it this air of quality that you weren't expecting. I know it sounds daft, but the little LED lights, the way that the camera image quality is just really high, little things like that will definitely kind of appeal. And just the car itself, I think, will be a bit of a conversation starter. Not only that the frugality of this car and the fact that Haval claim that I should be able to get up to 568 miles on a full tank will definitely come in handy. I just gave a nod then to a random bloke who can see me filming, and that's the key thing. So what I would say is, have a look at it, go for a test drive, see what you think. I do think the infotainment system could also be a bit of a deal breaker along with the boot space, and as a result there are rivals out there, and there are plenty of them, that might be more appealing. But there are some extra bonuses to the Haval as well. It does come with a 5-year manufacturer's warranty. There is an 8-year warranty for the battery, so that will definitely appeal if you're looking to get the Jolion Pro as kind of a long-term investment. So yeah, I think this is a great start from the Chinese brand. It is a little bit rough around the edges because we have seen that with these type of cars at this price tag, but it is intriguing. Definitely have a look and see what you think, because I think to some people it will definitely appeal, but to others things like the boot and the infotainment system might be a bit of a deal breaker. But if they're not, then definitely have a little look. So everyone, I do hope you have enjoyed my review of the GWM Haval Jolion Pro. Of course, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notifications icon to let you know when I, Dave the Auto Bear, bring out a new video. If you got any questions about the Haval and my time with it, please put them down in the comments section below and I'll do my utmost to answer them. Of course, don't forget to follow on social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram and X. And yeah, I have been really intrigued with the Jolion Pro after seeing it a couple of months ago and doing that walk around video. And I hope this isn't the last car we see from the brand, because, well, they have got quite a few models out and it'll be really kind of interesting to see how they develop in the UK. But when it comes to value for money, at starting a smidge under 24 grand, yeah, this will definitely appeal to a lot of people out there. But yeah, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all in the next video. So take care, everyone, and bye-bye. Actually, before I say goodbye, I will ask, how do you like the new look? I'm kind of ditching the Auto Bears polo shirt, kind of going just not as, I don't know, not as formal as before. Let me know what you think. But anyway, guys, take care and see you in the next one.